Hello, my name is Micaiah Stevens. Welcome to Hamlet Development Log number 3. We make a game called Hamlet. It's available on Steam and work for a company called Haven Studios. You can, it's a lot of different ways to leave feedback. Anyway, so it's just a quick status report. We're back on track. We kind of like to do these. We are a little bit, we didn't push out an update this week, so we are still on the point 0.8 live branch and the point 0.10 beta branch. We feel it's still on track. Anyway, so we finished up log 2 on the 17th, and then we started working on this on the 25th. We hope to get it on the 26th, but we had quite a bit of concern. Part of the problem was I always kept saying anyways, and hopefully we'll avoid that. So we're talking about some of the status where we're on Steam, and then we have some topics. We're talking about some campaign changes. We've got some command changes, and then some coming soon. Anyway, so we have a demo here for you. This is not available on Steam. This is the version 0.11. It's kind of a bug kind of warnings. A lot of behind the scene work sort of happened. We're definitely still thinking options are definitely one of the large point that we should be working on. And part of that, so you can see that we don't have the campaign anymore. We just have a sandbox and adventure. And part of the reason we did that to handle that is we thought it would be a lot more complicated, but it just came out to be just these three static bools, which are kind of our game settings options right now for the campaign, sandbox, and adventure. And once it implemented that, we dumped that into the main menu and disabled the buttons, and that's all it needed. Anyway, so we're gonna. No, yeah, there we go. There we go. Right for our first, anyway. So we're gonna show you the adventure mode. Not much has changed in the adventure mode. It just is kind of where we're thinking about going with the game a little bit more. It sort of feels like the adventure. Yeah, I can still talk to this person. If someone's in the water and you try to hit a tree or something, that sometimes it doesn't work. But the adventure mode is kind of similar to the Dwarf Fortress adventure mode. And so that's and then but we'll still have we'll bring back campaign at some point. It's just adding in changes to the world, and then it felt like we had to go back and retest all the campaign and every these stages and all that. It just became a lot more work. So we're talking about some command adventures, and this is command changes or command. These are command we talked a little bit a while back about the unified UI. So we had these various different UI elements that were part of the adventure mode. They were part of the campaign, or the sandbox, or the sort of one mode. And we felt like, hey, we needed to get this all together. We're still quite not there. We're not quite there yet on some of the debug and sort of adding a lot more information. And these are sort of debug, sort of test features. Anyway, so we have, yeah, there we go. I'm going to try to get away from saying that, but we have these commands. They're just things that the game can choose to ask for, and it gives us a way to test out various features. And in this one, we're testing out this it's called a wood pile, and it can hold up to 7 logs. And we're just trying to test out the fact that we can add and remove based on demand, and that allows us to add in various things. So now that we've looked at the adventure, we kind of want to look at most of the major changes happened in the sandbox mode, which includes that camera. We had the camera in there, but it sort of panned over and then did some mistakes, so we sort of improved that quite a bit. And part of that is we still kind of walk around the same way we do. But the big changes, and you could always see these menus, but some of the big changes is now in talking about the node path, which is sort of the ability for this is a generic thing for this thing to path where it needs to go. And the big changes over here is we're on the node 10.7, and we leave the target node, and sometimes that leaves path data, which is totally fine. And part of that is because we wanted to have the ability to right-click on a tree, which is something we've been working on quite a while. But when you'd go to this tree, he would sort of get to the tree, and then you start, not even turns towards the tree. And we needed the target node. You can sort of see that he's sort of collecting that target node, and changing. There's obviously a few things to adjust with that. And yeah, and there's another one you can sort of see where if we're moving in a certain direction, we want to finish that move. Yeah, you can sort of, he slides into that move, which is not great. But this just gave us a lot more options to have the target node. We may have to change this in the future. We could keep some temporary data and a lot of extra stuff, but we thought it was such a core feature that we wanted to get because interacting with something on this level is such a basic level. Anyways, you can see the node pathers are sort of falling through. They get stuck if they feel. Anyway, so you can also, yeah, there we go. You can also go inside using the REST system, and it sort of breaks this system as well. We're not quite sure. We haven't. We're not sleeping. We know. So it just sort of, there's a disconnect between where it's definitely at the 10.9 node. If you look right here, we're at the 10.9 node. Let's just should kind of point out a little bit on the bottom right. You can see that we're on node 10.9, and it gives us some data about it. Well, that's hidden because we have this overlay of the information on the game, and we really appreciate having these sort of, when we look at a screenshot or look at someone play our game, we kind of want to know that they're in the sandbox mode, what their resolution is. There's sort of the pre-alpha, it doesn't really matter, but it's sort of in the future, maybe we'll have pre-alpha, beta, press release. We kind of want to know that, and then the version is the more important thing. So we'll have to find a way to sort of put that into in a different spot. Another thing we were testing a little bit is having it in the menu. So when you hit escape, this would pop up, but oftentimes they're not in the menu when we need to look at that. So hopefully we'll get that arranged. And a lot of this is just temporary. We'll have to think about what we're trying to accomplish here. We definitely want the data to come up, kind of like a tooltip that shows you where you can interact with things. Another big thing we are working on is trees. There isn't a lot of trees. Let's back out and see if we can get some more trees generated. Eventually we'll have hopefully a better. Yeah, here's a little bit more trees generated. The trees are actually, the concern with the trees is that this is the tree node. You can see right here that is saying, hey, there's a node 1416. That's a tree, and it. But the tree actually has, because of the leaves portion of the tree, if a tree is sitting right here, it breaks the physics system, which is, we could either fix that but we do kind of like the idea of having our tree spaced out. Well, part of the thing with that is these trees have an area around them that is considered part of the tree as well. So we've been playing with a lot of that, and it sort of cut out a lot of the trees, which is good in the fact that they're not breaking as often, but yeah, so another thing we want to talk about is another little interesting bug. So we have our character. Let me talk about this first, though. When one of the things we're going to look at in our next system is adding more character interactions and adding more abilities. We have a semi combat abilities, which is kind of what we're thinking about doing with this. So right now, as it stands, we're not really doing anything sort of, except when you hit a tree, a lot of things are sort of just running full bore, which is probably okay. You kind of want to do move around and feel like you're interacting with the world on a quick basis, but that also means that you can strafe with the character, and honestly some of that is probably not as good as it could be, because you really don't. You could sort of shuffle to the left, but it gives you sort of this. But what we kind of think also too, maybe, is if when you hit this left button, it would as if you hit this button, which in this case rotates the camera. And if we actually showcase the other button, if we hit escape, now when you hit the left, you can sort of see this a little bit more prominent that it's sort of like, when you hit left, it would instead rotate, and then that's going to be a future change that we're going to look at. It's kind of like this idea where you have to sort of move in that direction. We could add in abilities or something else to add in the the abilities to bring this back and change it, various things. We'll have to see how that works. Anyways, that's a pretty good overall. Let's see. We had some. Okay, so we want to talk about some of the in development, not promised, coming soon. And where are these? Well, a lot of these are part of this idea here that we want to talk about some of the well, maybe the other. We need to be able to set up so you can switch to the different cameras because we feel like. So when you look at some of these characters, for instance, and I say that I want to move my character right here, and you're totally fine. Well, we have an NPC, we have a wall, and we have this woodpile. Well, the wall is not actually part of the world, so you can actually just you could just right click on the wall. Sometimes you can right click on the wall because it doesn't. Sometimes it often doesn't tell you where you're at in the world. Uh, and a lot of these are almost said it again. A lot of these are sort of in testing, sort of in this project. They're being developed in here. So like the pather systems, we needed the node path, we needed the characters, we needed a lot of this stuff in here. So a lot of these test features, and that's why this commands. You can also reset your achievements here and do various things. And we do need to add in the ability to sort of keep track of what's happening, but so a lot of these test features are sort of implemented into the main game and they make it in quicker. But some of the other test features like dungeons, inventories, characters, quests, towns, NPCs, a lot, or a different variety of NPCs, um, are part of a larger system that doesn't actually include. So I think the dungeon system is quite ready to go. We have it sort of doing a lot of things we want to do. And that's sort of, we kind of think we could bring it back into the core system, but then we have and we're going to prune out the files we need for the dungeon. But a lot of that is one of the big problems with the dungeon is when you go into this area for the dungeon, it generates the dungeon. Cool, you go into it, but you can't go to the second level and then the next level and the next level because that's one of the things that's not being implemented yet. But a lot of, and some of the culling too. When you go underground, we need to cull the above ground and sort of figure out how we're going to do that. So that's kind of the future. I'm not sure exactly what we'll talk about in development log 4. We have quite a few subjects we want to talk about, but those are game design subjects that we're kind of worked on in the background that fit, which weren't part of the main. They're part of the long-term game development for Hamlet that we have. We're working on a various RPG elements and different types of systems that may not make it into the main game, but they feel like it gives us a way to test. We have this combat system that gives us a way to test combat and various things like that. And it's an entire game in itself, so we'll have to look at that. But it gives us the ability to run a bunch of tests and gives us an idea of how to run um, various changes, and then in that system it's sort of like a UI driven game, and this is kind of a 3D driven game. But so part of that. So as we move forward, hopefully we'll have that sort of handled. We'll have a better idea of what to do. It's been kind of a slow week. Because we're working on a bunch of warnings, working on a bunch of other secondary systems out of some minor contract work to look at. It just helps us to just not so be focused on one single core project because it sort of you suffers a lot of burnout. So hopefully that will improve as we go on. We'll have more of those secondary projects wrap up, and one I don't think it takes a long time to implement the projects back together, and hopefully we'll have some pretty big changes. But that's just sort of, it takes a while to cycle back into the main core project. So and then hopefully, I'm not sure, I might push off the update till next week because there's obviously several bugs, and sort of I want to clean up the pathing system a little bit better. And then try to hammer out. I've noticed we cleaned up all the compile warnings, but then I noticed there was a whole bunch of project warnings, which are not. I'd like to clean up all the prefabs of the game as well. So that's going to be probably a project in itself. But I think it would help it clean up the core game. And then I'd like to actually do another pruning of the game, even though it's actually quite awesome that Steam does incremental updates. I think our beta build is somewhere around 6. Our beta branch is somewhere around 6 megs, and our whole game is like 50 to 100 megs. So if we can prune that down, it might help get the game out quicker. And we have an insane internet, so it's like we download a gig in a few minutes, but some people don't have that option. So we're hoping it's definitely one of those things like to actually get into the game people have to download it. So it's like you want to have it as quick as possible. So hopefully we'll have some of those changes out there on the branch. Yeah, I appreciate people that are checking out this the various other. We're kind of we're leaving a lot of. We talked about, I think, on Friday-ish. I think we talked about on the discussion board on Steam. We talked about, hey, we're looking on this. We might not get this out in time, but we wanted to not delay the YouTube video. So we appreciate, because it's just really awesome to talk about some of these scenes and share. And then we appreciate everybody's support and help. And there's a lot of ways to communicate, and we definitely appreciate any feedback. Good and bad. It's like any feedback is just awesome. Someone was talking about recently the volume on one of the last videos is pretty bad, and we totally agree. It's like we can see the things, but we also appreciate there's a lot of positive feedback as well. So hopefully when we get this, we're still it's kind of still the. I guess since I'm I'm the one who's sort of deciding this stuff, but it's sort of a struggle between the adventure mode, which is really cool, which is something we've been wanting to think about for a very long time. But then we also want to feel like that we could add in this the ability to add in secondary things that would make that much more fun by adding in taking away some of the tedium of that is hopefully some of the challenge. Anyway, so that's definitely there we go. One final, anyways, but that's devlog number 3. So appreciate everybody's support, and we'll see everybody next time. Thank you very much. You take care.